and Monitoring Officer. So I'll be opening this meeting today, pending the appointment of a chair. So if I could just give members a few sort of general housekeeping rules, just to be aware that this meeting is being recorded and will be made available on our website and YouTube channel in due course. Could I ask that if you could just switch your microphones to mute, please, and ensure your mobile phones are silent. Please note throughout this meeting, if you do wish to ask a question, it would be great if you could raise your electronic hand at the appropriate time. So the first item on today's agenda is the appointment of a chair of the Celtic Freeport Public Funds Committee. Could I have a proposer, please, for that post of chair?
Thank you, Craig. I'd like to nominate Councillor John Harvey as chair, please.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Paul Miller, I assume you second him. Thank you very much indeed. So members, if you don't indicate to the contrary, I assume you're going to be happy for Councillor John Harvey to take this role as chair?
I see no indications to the contrary, Craig.
Great. On that note then, I'll hand over to yourself, Councillor Harvey.
Thank you very much, Craig, and thank you, members, and good morning. This is obviously the meeting of the Celtic Freeport Public Funds Committee, so I'm grateful for your nomination and seconding and support as chair, so thank you very much for that. So moving on then, agenda item 3 of the report is an appointment of vice chairperson. So I would be more than happy to propose Councillor Steve Hunt as vice chair, and wondered if I could get a seconder for that nomination, please.
John, happy to second Councillor Steve Hunt to be vice chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon. Appreciate that. So perhaps a show of hands then, all in favour? Yep, I believe that's unanimous, Chloe. So welcome, yep. Steve. Welcome, Steve, as vice chair. So we'll move on now then to agenda item 4, declarations of interests. Are there any declaration of interest from any member present? If so, could you please raise your electronic hand?
I see no indications, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Chloe. So no declarations there. So moving on to the agenda proper then, first substantive item on the agenda is the Celtic Freeport terms of reference for the Celtic Freeport Joint Committee. This is the report of the Head of Legal and Democratic Services at Neath Talbot, and also the Monitoring Officer here, Craig. So if I could hand over to you, Craig, to introduce this report, I'd be grateful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. So as members will be aware, a key principle of the Freeport programme is that decisions will be made via a process and structure that preserves the public and private dual key approach, basically ensuring that there's democratic accountability for the expenditure of public funds. So to enable that democratic process ultimately to take place, it was decided that we could create this Public Funds Committee. So the predominant role that you will have in the Public Funds Committee is to have that democratic accountability for the allocation of public funds. It will help to ensure that there's compliance with all the various legislative requirements and value for money then as well. So you will be able to either approve or reject proposals which have come forward from the Celtic Freeport Company. You will have the option as well to look at decision making, maybe where they've decided that they don't want to support particular projects, and have the opportunity to ask questions and also to refer matters back to them. And you can see from the report that I've provided on page 4, I've just given you a summary as to what the basic roles ultimately you will have and where your meetings will be sort of covering over the course of the next couple of months and years, hopefully. So one of the key points you should be aware of is that you will be considering and reviewing project business cases seeking financial support from public funding as recommended by the company. You will be approving those project business cases and then having the absolute discretion on whether to release funding in that regard. You'll also be overseeing the general day-to-day management of those public funds, with Neath Talbot Council then acting as the accountable body to UK government in respect of them. So just a few things for you to be aware of. The Joint Committee will comprise 6 members in total. Each council has the ability to appoint a deputy. So if one particular cabinet member cannot attend, then another cabinet member can attend in your place. But what we have said is our quorum will be the 3 members from each individual council. So that's quite an important aspect. We need to make sure that there are 3 at each time. Each member of the Joint Committee shall have 1 vote. Decisions of the Joint Committee shall be made by a simple majority of those representing a quorum, who are present and entitled to vote. However, if the matters are tied, a deadlock, as I've effectively referred it to, then that matter will not be deemed approved, and it will be an opportunity to have further discussions and further dialogue before we can bring that item back to you then for a further report. One important aspect to be aware is the chair does not have a casting vote in these meetings. It's 3 votes from Pembrokeshire, 3 votes from Neath Talbot. We will be refining this obviously as we look to move forward, and just hopefully that will give you an overview as what the main function is, Chair, but happy to answer any questions members have.
Thank you very much, Craig, and thank you for that overview. So I'll open it up to questions. Any members have any questions on the terms of reference? No, doesn't appear so. Okay, just very quick one from me, Chair. I think it's only right and proper that there is no casting vote as myself as Chair in this particular role, because obviously it's a joint partnership between Neath Talbot members and obviously PCC members. In a hypothetical situation where there was a deadlock, it's referred back at a future meeting, I assume, Craig, in the hope that we will reach agreement. What if we don't reach agreement? Is there some sort of default position that would kick in then?
Yes, there is effectively. So if you don't reach agreement on a specific matter, then obviously that matter is not approved. But if there is a way, then we need to try and resolve a dispute or there are issues. There are some dispute resolution clauses ultimately within the agreement where there'll be opportunity for some independent arbitration or various different elements there. But the key point is, unless all members ultimately agree on a proposal, it doesn't go anywhere in that sense. So we do need to have some uniformity in that scenario where there is a deadlock.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate the confirmation on that. Any further questions then, or shall we move on to the recommendation? Nope, doesn't look like it. Okay, thank you, members. So the recommendation before us is on page 8 of the agenda. And just for those who may be watching later, I shall read that out. So it's recommended that members of the Joint Committee note the terms of reference of the Celtic Freeport Joint Committee annexed at Appendix A. And just for completeness sake, could I get a mover for that recommendation? I appreciate it's for noting, but just for completement's sake, could I get a mover and a seconder? Josh, moving, thank you.
I'm happy to second, John.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Steve. So obviously it's a report for noting, so just by way of a show of hands, all in favour? Okay. Any against or abstentions? That looks unanimous to me, Chloe.
Yep, that's
Okay.
gone through, Chair.
Thank you very much, member. Thank you. Next agenda item then is agenda item 6, Celtic Freeport full business case seed capital proposals. So this is the joint report of the Chief Executive of Neath Talbot and the Chief Executive of Pembrokeshire County Council, and this report will be introduced by Chief Executive of PCC, Bramble, who I think may have lost connect. No, he's back. He's back. I thought he'd lost connectivity for a minute there. But before I ask Will to provide the overview of the report, if members could note that the appendices in relation to this report are considered exempt under paragraph 14, and will need to go into private session if anybody wants to make comments or ask questions in regard to appendices 1 and 2. So could I ask members and officers at this stage to refrain from referring to the appendices during the public session, and at a time we will need to go into private session, obviously, to safeguard the confidentiality of those papers. So at this stage, Will, could I hand over to you for an overview, please? Thank you.
Yes, my apologies, Chair. I was under the impression that the Chief Executive of Neath Talbot was going to introduce this item. Karen, is that your understanding?
I had asked if you would do it because I was meant to be travelling a little bit.
Right, I never got that message. So there you are. You've caught,
okay.
You've caught me on the hop, but I'm very happy. Do you want to, or I'm very happy to?
I think it's really for you to repeat what you probably said in
Okay,
the earlier meeting.
Very happy to do so.
Sorry about that, Will. I mean, I was only aware of this, obviously, first thing this morning. I thought you'd been aware of it as well, so apologies.
That's
Nothing
quite
like
right.
dropping you into it.
That's quite right. Well, members, good morning. Will Bramble, Chief Executive of Pembrokeshire County Council. You've clearly got a good understanding of the terms of reference. Craig Griffiths has covered those off. So the purpose of today's meeting, I should say by way of context that the 4 partners entered into the Freeport endeavour a couple of years ago with a successful bid, and then we had 2 principal gateways to go through after acceptance of that bid. The first one was the outline business case. That was endorsed by both councils in December 2023 and submitted on the 22nd of December to UK government. We were then expecting feedback on that outline business case and the tax sites relevant to the Freeport to be taken into statute probably this summer. But the general election got in the way of that ratification and any feedback, and we haven't had that process completed yet. We were then expecting that to take place after the summer break when UK government returned, and we haven't had that completed yet. The second key milestone and gateway is the full business case. And UK governments have asked us to accelerate the submission of the full business case to take place over the next week or so, so that they can get that process completed by the end of October. So we have had to accelerate this over the last sort of month or so and bring forward the full business case. The full business case is going to go to our two respective cabinets next week for ratification before final submission to UK government. Within the full business case is the requirement to submit our proposals for the investment of the seed capital funding from UK government. And that's why you have this report in front of you today. These are the recommendations, specifically in the appendices to the report. These are the recommendations of the Celtic Freeport Company. This has been through a fairly rigorous process, but I should add that the accelerated timeline has not allowed the level of scrutiny that we would otherwise have wished in some specific projects. But I think there has been an appropriate and reasonable level of scrutiny to get into this process, and certainly sufficient enough for you to make a judgment today one way or the other on those projects you are content to submit as part of the full business case, which I very much hope our respective cabinets will endorse next week. And so what we will then see is the full business case submitted, and we very much hope the respective tax sites to be taken into statute later this autumn, and the full business case endorsed by UK government. I very much hope we've got Mr. Lewis Atter from KPMG on hand as well to answer any technical questions on the process. I should add that Lewis is a senior consultant at KPMG who has been advising this Freeport endeavour now for some 2.5 years, and is experienced across a number of Freeports in the UK, and has been involved in the process of scrutinising the bids for the seed capital funding of £25 million. I think that's it by way of introduction, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Will. I'm wondering at this stage, members, that perhaps I could bring Lewis in, but conscious, Lewis, of not to get into any detail on the schemes that are contained within the appendices, but maybe a bit more of an overview from yourself in terms of process and, essentially what the seed capital funding is all about could be useful, I think, for members of the public who may be watching. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the seed capital element up to £25 million per Freeport, a long established part of the package. The idea is to help pump prime investments at an early stage to help the Freeport deliver on its objectives. So there's a particular focus on addressing blockages for the development of tax sites and the rest. So long established. It's important to note that, as I said, that the FBC is only a stage in the process of ultimately allocating seed capital. It's a set of proposals for government to scrutinise. If the FBC is approved, there are then individual business cases that are required to fill in the details on each of these propositions that you'll be considering. So this is not the end of the road by any means, and other Freeports have experienced a need to revisit their allocation because the detailed business cases in respect of some of the propositions that got through at FBC ultimately didn't deliver, for example, because business plans change, the private match funding didn't arrive, things of that sort. So it's a staging post, but an important one because it's a big element of the scrutiny that government subjects the FBC to, and getting through the FBC opens up retained business rates as in addition to the seed capital. So it's an important milestone. The Freeport has established a series of processes to get through this allocation, and with a view to decisions in the future about allocation of retained rates. This involves an independent panel supporting the Freeport itself, with recommendations from that independent panel going to the Freeport board's recommendations then come to you, and as you've heard, there's a dual key, so you are not bound to accept what the Freeport recommends. You can send it back for further scrutiny and questions, and this is a part of that dual key. We need to have democratic accountability for the expenditure of public funds, so that dual key has been built into this process from the start. So the process that we've established had to, as Will said, to be foreshortened. So the bit that was foreshortened was the independent panel scrutiny of the individual propositions. We expected that to have a few weeks to run. We had to cut that short. But the propositions were sought from landowners and those related to the Freeport proposition earlier in the year. They were received in May. A process was underway with the independent panel. That's the process that had to be foreshortened. Recommendations came from the panel to the Freeport board. The Freeport board has made its recommendations to you.
Thank you very much for that, Lewis. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of the various projects, any general comments for Lewis before I suggest we move into private session? No, doesn't appear so. Okay, thank you. So on that basis then, members, given that appendices 1 and 2 are restricted items, I would like to propose that we go into private session. And the reason for doing so is that appendices 1 and 2 are not for publication pursuant to Regulation 5.2 and 5 of Statutory Instrument 2001, number 2290, and paragraph 14 of Part 4 of Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972, pursuant also to paragraph 21 of the schedule, and in the circumstances of the case, the public interest in maintaining the exemption is considered to outweigh the public interest in disclosing the information. So I'm happy to move that we go into private section. Could I have a seconder, please?
Happy to second, Chair.
Thank you very much, Steve. So on that basis, we have a proposer and a seconder. Could I get a show of hands that every member is happy to go into private session? I think that is pretty much unanimous, Chloe.
Just checking, Councillor Miller's happy to move into private session as well.
Thank you, Chloe. I've missed that.
Councillor Paul Miller.
Still showing as being in the meeting on my screen, Chloe, but I can't see
I
him.
think he's been having connection difficulties. I've noticed he's dropped in and out a few times.
Okay. Conscious of keeping the meeting core, of course.
Yeah. He's dropped out, Chair.
Okay, so given the nature of the meeting and the fact we have to have 6 members, 3 from each authority, we are now currently not quoried. I'm assuming Chloe will have to wait for him to reconnect. Oh, Craig is coming. Sorry, Craig.
Yes, Chair, we need to make sure that we've got a 6th member from on the call here. So Councillor Miller or somebody else ultimately from Pembrokeshire, if there's some difficulties here. So I suggest we just give a few minutes just to check he's available to come back on the call.
Okay, thank you, Craig. We'll just hang fire for a bit then. Thank you. Okay, Paul's back. Just put a message in the chat there. Connection issues. Sorry about it. It's been one of those mornings this morning, Paul. I think a few members have been suffering from technical issues, both in the scrutiny committee prior to this one. We have just taken a vote on going into private session, but we need you to confirm that you are happy to do so in order to keep the meeting quorate.
Paul, the chair has just asked if you're happy to go into private session. If you could just confirm that for the record.
Yes, I might do that, John. I'm sorry, I'm having connectivity problems this morning.
Is that acceptable? He can hear you, Chair, and I've got him on audio here. If you can hear him, is that acceptable, Craig?
I just heard that. If Craig is happy with that.
Yeah, happy with that.
Okay, lovely. On that basis, then we will move into private session. Chloe, can you just tell me when we are in private session?
Yes, I'll just stop the recording now, Chair.
Thank you.